How's it going? Dave here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about tension and release. Tension and release, I believe, is one of the most important, if not the most important aspects of writing really good music. So what exactly do I mean by tension and release? Well, tension is when we build kind of an unrest and an instability in our music, and that needs some sort of resolution. And then the release is, of course, that resolution. Things sound settled and things sound comfortable, I guess. So what you want to do is bring your listener through a roller coaster of these ups and downs of tension and release and tension and release. And there are so many countless different ways of creating tension and release in your music. So I've thought of a few ways we can add tension and release to our music, and I'm going to be breaking them down into a few sections. So first of all, let's talk about how we can add tension and release to our music with the melodies that we create. So if we take a major scale, for example, the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. There are some notes that sound resolved and are good for the release part of the tension and release, and there are some notes that sound tense. And these are called stable and active notes. The active notes are the notes that create tension. The stable notes are the notes that sound resolved and release that tension. So we've got C, D, E, F, G, A and B. C, E and G are our stable notes. These sound nice and resolved. And then the other notes are the tension notes, the active notes. So we've got D, we've got C, we've got A, and we've got B. And especially B, this last note, is called the leading tone, and it wants to lead into our C. But just like that, the A wants to move to the G, the F wants to move to the E, and the D wants to move to the C. Or it could even go to the E as well. So when you're writing a melody, think, is this note an active note or a stable note? And do I want to be creating tension here or not? Always be asking yourself, no matter what one of these techniques I'm showing you, is this fitting with the tension or the release that I want to create in this particular part of the song? So if you pay attention to your active and stable notes, that could be a good way of creating tension and release. But always use your ears, because some active notes over particular chords might be chord tones of the particular chord that's being played and might actually sound more resolved. Another way you can add tension and release into your melodies is to add chromatic notes into your melodies. So for example, if I take the minor pentatonic scale, we can add the blues note in, which is a chromatic note. A chromatic note is a note that just doesn't fit into our key. And this adds a little bit of tension and spices the melody up. And you can just resolve that tension by moving back to a note that is in the key. So for example, hear that tension note, and it's resolved there when I land on the note that's in the scale again. So great way of adding tension into your melodies. So that's just some of the ways with melodies you can create tension and release. Let's move on to harmony now. Let's talk about chords. In our key of C, we'll stick to the key of C. We could play a dominant chord, which is chord number 5, which is a G7. And this G7 really wants to resolve back to our C. Yeah, that creates tension. That's because we've got these two notes, F and B, in there, and they create a tritone, which is a dissonant interval. And dissonant intervals are a really great way of adding tension. We'll go into that in a second. But this G7 resolves very nicely into a C. And of course that creates tension, but we can create even more tension by maybe altering this G7 chord. And we do this by either raising or flattening the 5th or the 9th. And these are called altered dominant chords. I've done videos on altered dominant chords, which you can check out up there. I'll link loads of examples of things I talk about down in the description so that you can follow through with this and learn more. And there's loads of stuff in my book, Chord Charisma, about all these chord techniques, so definitely check that out as well. But yeah, we can maybe sharpen the 5th, creates even more tension there. We could flatten the 9th maybe, it's just a little bit more tense than a standard G7 chord, and it makes that resolution so much sweeter. You could also think about adding chords that are not in the key. So there are lots of different ways of doing this, but one simple way of doing this is borrowing from the parallel minor key. So if we're in C major, we could borrow chords from the key of C minor. So for example, let's play C, F. I could borrow an F minor from the key of C minor. That creates a little bit of tension because you can't just leave it there. It sounds tense. And then we release the tension by playing the C again. Or maybe you could play this D minor 7 flat 5. That's borrowed from the key of C minor. Into an A minor maybe. Yeah, that A minor really resolves the tension there. See, with the whole concept of tension, you can't leave it there. It has to be released to an A minor or another chord. Then we can go to F. Then we can go to G7. And then maybe doing a G7 altered chord, increasing the tension. And then resolve the tension again on our C. So again, always be asking yourself, do I want this part of the song to be tense, or do I want it to be resolved? And if I want it to be more tense, how can I make it more tense? Could I change the melody up? Can I change the chords up? Always be thinking this when writing your music. And I can guarantee, it's definitely worked for me, that your music will sound a lot better for it. Another way you can use chords and harmony to really add tension is by using suspensions. If you're playing a chord, for example, if I wanted to resolve back to the C, I could use obviously the G7 altered, and then I could suspend the C chord. So I could do a C sus4 maybe. Doesn't sound quite resolved, so we've delayed the resolution even more, and then we can play a normal C, and it sounds fully resolved there. So, or you could resolve up from a sus2 chord to a major chord. Like that. There's loads of different ways you can do suspensions, and I've done a video on suspensions, so I'm not going to go into detail on loads of them. Again, I'll link it down in the description for you. One quick thing, I mentioned dissonant intervals like the tritone or the semitone, minor second interval. If you can utilize those, then that will really create some tension. If you can even add those into your chords. That sounds like quite a tense chord. Another aspect of music that you can add tension and release to is your rhythm. So if your song is kind of in straight 8th notes and 16th notes, that's the kind of vibe of your song. You can throw things off completely by maybe using triplets or quintuplets. That just sounds a bit different to what your ear's used to hearing in the song, adding tension. And when you go back to the standard 8th notes, the straights, then things sound resolved. So people often usually think of chords and melodies and harmony when it comes to tension and release, but there's only one aspect of it. There's so many more elements to tension and release. So rhythm is a really good one. Yeah, so along with like changing your note values to like 16th note triplets, whatever you want to do, you could incorporate pauses into your music. So I don't know, let me think of something on the spot right here. Just delaying that resolution again with a pause and some silence. I didn't have to change the chords, I didn't have to change the melody, I just added some silence in there, and that made things a little bit tense. Just like if you're having a conversation and there's an awkward silence, that creates tension. That's kind of like the musical equivalent of an awkward silence. So definitely add that into your songwriting toolbox. Another way you can use rhythm to create tension and release is to play either ahead or behind the beat. And these two types of playing create completely different types of tension. So when you're playing ahead of the beat, there's this kind of frantic, kind of like we're rushing to get somewhere kind of vibe, which creates kind of a chaotic kind of vibe until you bring things back to being on the beat, which resolves that tension. And then when you're playing behind the beat, which I've done a video on, link in the description, or up there. When you're playing behind the beat, it's more of a laid back vibe, but almost like too laid back, like the beat is getting ahead of you, so you've got to kind of catch up with it. So that creates another kind of tension. And it all really depends on the kind of vibe you're going for with your song. You might even not want to use playing behind the beat or ahead of the beat. You might want to just stay dead on the beat. It just depends. But there are some ideas. And finally, let's talk about articulation. So articulation is basically the way we play our notes. So the guitar in particular is amazing with articulation. There's so many different things we can do. Slides, bends, hammer-ons and pull-offs, palm muting, staccato, legato. We need to take advantage of that. So let's think of some ways we can create tension and release by using articulation. Say we want to get to this note here, this root note of the A minor pentatonic scale. We want to land on this one, and we're just going to run down the scale. Okay, that sounds quite nice, but we can create tension leading up to that final note by maybe palm muting or using staccato notes. They all sound very tense, I think. And here it sounds resolved when you just play that last note very smoothly. What else could you do? You could play it faster. I mean, that's more rhythm, but hear that, how there's tension. I haven't changed the notes, but it sounded more tense on the build up to that last note. So really think about your articulation and how you're playing your notes. And it's a really great thing to use when your music doesn't have tension and release in the melody or the rhythm or the harmony, but you need to create some. You can definitely take advantage of your articulation to create that tension instead. So I hope this video got you thinking. There's a lot to take from it. Make sure you use it in your songwriting. It will really improve your songwriting. It definitely has for me. When I think about using tension and release, I come up with so many more ideas because I'm trying to tell a story now with my music. Rather than just thinking, oh, what riff can come next? What should I write over the top of this? I'm thinking, how do I want the listener to feel? What kind of emotion am I putting forth with this music? So definitely apply this into your songwriting and you'll see the benefits. If you enjoyed the video, click like, let me know what you thought in the comments. If you've got any other video suggestions, let me know in the comments too. I'm always listening. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Hit that notification bell so you're notified every single time I release a new video. And also, I've got a book out that I mentioned earlier called Chord Charisma. And in the description, I'm offering the first 2 chapters for free. Those first 2 chapters are going to show you how to write a cool diatonic chord progression using principles of tension and release. So tonic, subdominant and dominant chords. If you don't know about that, that's going to teach you. So that's going to show you how to create tension and release in your chord progressions with just simple diatonic chords. And then it's going to show you how to add even more tension by using 7th, 9th, 11th and 13th chords, all with all the chord diagrams there, so that you can really create some interesting and sophisticated sounding chord progressions. And that's just the first 2 chapters of my book, and it's free. So I don't know what you're doing if you don't go into the description and check it out. So make sure you do, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day.